Physicist Albert Einstein showed that time is an illusion, and therefore it's relative. It can vary for different observers depending on your speed through space. To Einstein, time is considered the fourth dimension, and space is described as a three-dimensional arena. Einstein's theory of special relativity says that time slows down or speeds up depending on how fast you move relative to something else. Approaching the speed of light, a person inside a spaceship would age much slower than, let's say, his twin at home. There are also numerous recent pictures of public figures circulating online, supposedly showing these people to be in another time, even hundreds of years earlier. And the resemblance to many of these photos are simply uncanny and truly hard to overlook. Are these clones? Doppelgangers, perhaps? Or is it possible that the famous, the rich, and the elite of the world have ways of time travel? Several known photos are widely debated as proof of time travel, one of which was taken in 1941 at the reopening ceremony of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia. It's obvious this man's attire doesn't fit the time period, and in addition to that, he's holding a small, pocket-sized camera that had yet to be developed at that time. This is a Greek statue from the year 100 BC showing what looks to be a laptop. It's been considered that the holes on the side are the USB ports. Another widely circulated image is one of the woman in a 1928 Charlie Chaplin film who is supposedly talking on a cell phone while walking in the background. Not until many years later was this even realized and brought to attention. Here's another image of a woman talking on a cell phone in the year 1938. The video seems to validate these claims substantially as well. This is a picture of the London hammer, found in London, Texas, retrieved from stone, dated to be nearly 400 billion years old. It's been proven that there's no way this artifact could have been created during the era and still remains a mystery to date. This picture was taken in 1917 and published in Lester Reyes Peterson's book, The Cape Scott Story. A young man in shorts and a t-shirt clearly stands out among the crowd. No one is dressed as him, and looking closer, it seems the people sitting around him seem to be surprised by the presence of this man, as they look at him with what seems to be confusion and astonishment. For years, Seattle attorney Andrew Basiago claims that from the ages 7 to 12, he was a part of Project Pegasus, a government program that worked on teleportation and time travel under the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency throughout the 1960s and 70s. Basiago told the Huffington Post they trained children along with adults so they could test the mental and physical effects of time travel on children as well. He also mentions the existence of the jump room. It was in this room that Basiago claimed participants such as himself performed their secretive time travel experiments. The jump room was built using designs taken from Nikola Tesla after his death. Similarly, Al Bielek was recruited to work for the Montauk Project, which was another government-funded time travel project. According to Bielek, he not only traveled from California to Montauk via time travel, but he also took multiple trips to Mars. In 1954, a man trying to get through customs at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan, had a bit of trouble with the customs agents. It wasn't because he forgot to declare something on his customs form, but because he claimed to be from a country that didn't exist, and he had a passport and stamps to prove it. His passport was from a country named Torid, which he claimed was in between Spain and France. When customs officials pulled out a map and asked him if he meant Andorra, he became angry. He said that yes, the location was right, but Torid had existed for at least 1,000 years, and he had never heard of Andorra. The man was given a hotel room for the night while the police tried to figure out what was happening. Even though there were armed guards posted outside his room, the man had vanished by the next morning. His passport, which had been stored in the security office at the airport, was also gone. Officials never figured out the mystery of the man from Torid. The Philadelphia experiment allegedly took place in 1943 with the purpose of cloaking a ship and making it invisible to enemies' radar. However, it was said that the experiment went wrong. The ship not only vanished completely from Philadelphia, but it was teleported to Norfolk and went back in time some 10 seconds. When the ship appeared again, some crew members were physically fused to bulkheads. Others developed mental disorders. A few disappeared completely, and some reported traveling into the future and back. Interesting enough, Nikola Tesla was the director of engineering and research at Radio Company of America at the time, and was also involved in the experiment by making all the necessary calculations and drawings. However, he wasn't alive when the experiment took place. In April 2013, the Iranian news agency Fars carried a story claiming a 27-year-old Iranian scientist had invented a time machine that allowed people to see into the future. A few days later, the story was removed and replaced with a story quoting an Iranian government official that said no such device had been registered at all. However, after further research, it was discovered that a 27-year-old Iranian scientist named Ali Razigi registered a time-traveling machine for strategic inventions in 2013. He explained that the device worked by a set of complex algorithms to predict 5 to 8 years of the future life of any individual with 98% accuracy. The device can predict the future in a printout after taking readings from the touch of a user. Razigi said the Americans are trying to make this invention by spending millions of dollars on it, where he has already achieved it by a fraction of the cost. He went on to say that the reason they're not launching the prototype at this stage is because the Chinese will steal the idea and mass produce it in the millions. Air Marshal Sir Robert Victor Goddard was sent to inspect an abandoned airfield in Edinburgh in 1935. It was dilapidated, of which he made note. He got back in his plane and took off, but heavy rain and low visibility prevented him from going much further. So he turned around and headed back to the airfield to wait out the storm. As he approached the landing strip, something very strange happened. The clouds cleared. The sun began to shine, and he saw that the previously abandoned land strip was now bustling with mechanics in blue jumpsuits. There were also 4 yellow planes on the tarmac, and one of them was a kind he had never seen before. Now keep this in mind, Goddard is a military pilot and certainly familiar with all different plane models available at the time. Needless to say, he was totally confused. Had he imagined this? Was he hallucinating? Perhaps it's a dream. Well, 4 years later, he was sent back to the airfield, and it was now in full use, with mechanics wearing blue jumpsuits and yellow planes, just as he envisioned 4 years earlier. And sitting on the runway was the plane he couldn't identify in 1935, a Miles Magister. The Magister was first manufactured in 1938. 3 years after Goddard initially saw it. In 1979, Jeff and Pauline Simpson and Lynn and Cynthia Gisby were traveling through France together. When it became late, they decided to find a hotel for the night. They found a place not too far down the road from where they were traveling. An odd place it was, a 2-story building with only one word above the entrance that read, Hotel. The doors to the rooms had only wooden latches, no locks, and the windows had thick shutters with no glass. They got a room and stayed the night, despite everything seeming old-fashioned. The bed was hard, and the place didn't even have a telephone. When they went down to the dining room the next morning, they had a chance to see the hotel's other customers. They, too, looked strangely out of place, dressed in old clothing. The bill for their stay was only $20, while other hotels in the area were around $200 a night. And it wasn't until they returned to France and looked for the hotel again that they knew something was truly wrong. The hotel didn't even exist. This wasn't a matter of the hotel simply shutting down or being unable to find again. It simply was not there. They even asked around town, but no one had ever heard of it. It wasn't until much later that they realized this hotel was from the early 1900s. In 1921, Paul Amidus Denache, a Swiss-Austrian teacher with health problems, fell into a comatose state that lasted for 1 year. During this time, his consciousness traveled into the future, and it enters the body of another man who lives in the year 3906. In the book Chronicles from the Future, the amazing story of Paul Amidus Denache, the author indicates that the people of the future fully understood his peculiar situation, which they called conscious slide. They told Denache as many things as they could in relation to the historical events that took place between the 21st and 39th century. When Denache awakens from his coma, he finds himself back in the year 1922, but with an incredible amount of knowledge and information that he learned during his time in the future. Knowing that he doesn't have much time left, Denache decides to write a diary recording whatever he could remember from his amazing experience. These are some of the prophecies he listed in his journal. In 2309, as the result of accumulated and non-solved problems, another big disaster comes to Earth and is known as the Great Global War. In 2396, this great change leads to the final establishment of a global parliament and a global union of nations or states. But this global parliament, although is elected through voting by the nations, is not from politicians or businessmen, but from scientists and technologists. Money as we know it does not exist anymore. The planetary resources are redistributed and are now enough for every person. The overpopulation, the climate, the nutrition, and the ecological problems are all solved. Life is easy, and people work less during their lives. However, people are still with national consciousness and have not yet developed the planetary consciousness. Only after 2.5 centuries they finally did. Although they are not economic inequalities as we know them, they are still inequalities over control of the level of technology and properties. People are spiritually weak and sluggish, and this peculiar Dark Age era lasts until the year 3400. In the year 3382, a remarkable phenomenon happens in humanity. People, one after the other, acquire suddenly a new spiritual ability that could be called hypervision or hyperintuition, a direct access to the great spiritual light or direct knowledge with extremely powerful and of stunning clarity creative powers. It's also considered a mutation of the human brain. From the year 3400 to the year 4000, a new golden age comes in humanity after almost 1,000 years of this dark age. He goes on to say, in the new global government, there are no more scientists, but only universal creators. Personalities that combine simultaneously the qualities and abilities of each other. Everything in society is free. Clothes, food, transportation, etc. There is no private property, and the only inequalities are of honor and reputation. People do not count anymore the successes of their lives with the technological and material standards of living, but mainly with their emotional, mental, and spiritual development and self-improvement. In this time, people only work 2 years in their entire life, between the equivalents of 17 and 19 years old. The population of Earth is less than 1 billion people, and there is an abundance of products for a decent living. Paul Dinash was not an author, poet, or professional writer. Rather, he was an ordinary man who kept a journal, never with the expectations that it would be published one day. In November 2000, the Time Travel Institute forums saw a spike in unusual activity. Nestled among the usual conspiracy theories and far-fetched UFO sightings were a string of posts from a man who called himself John Titor. He claimed to be from the year 2036, saying that the government sent him back in time to 1975 to retrieve an IBM computer, which they needed in order to debug some computer programs. In 2003, Andrew Carlson was arrested for insider trading, but defended himself by stating that he was a time traveler from the year 2256. Allegedly, he made an initial investment of only $800, and in 2 weeks' time had a portfolio valued at over $350 million. He refused to give up the location of his timecraft or discuss how it actually works for the fear that the technology would fall into the wrong hands. In 2004, Marlon Pullman applied for a patent for a method of gravity distortion and time displacement. And even more recently, another person filed another patent for a space compression and time dilation machine that could be used for time travel. The main proposal that people at least consider worthy of attention for traveling to the past makes use of a weird concept called wormholes. A wormhole is something that Albert Einstein discovered. It's somewhat of a bridge from one location in space to another. It's considered to be a tunnel that gives you a shortcut through space and time. Now, he discovered this in 1935, but it was subsequently realized that if you manipulate the openings of a wormhole, put one near a black hole, or take one on a high-speed journey, then time of the two openings of this wormhole tunnel would not take off at the same rate, so that you will no longer just go from one location in space to another. If you go through this tunnel, through this wormhole, you'll go from one moment in time to a different moment in time. You go one way, you travel to the past. You go the other, and travel to the future. One possibility could be to go faster than the speed of light, which travels at 186,282 miles per second in a vacuum. Einstein's equations show an object at the speed of light would have both infinite mass and a length of 0. This appears to be physically impossible, although some scientists have extended his equations and said it might be feasible. Another possibility would be to move a ship rapidly around a black hole, or to artificially create that condition with a huge rotating structure. Physicist Stephen Hawking wrote in the Daily Mail in 2010, "Imagine they circled the black hole for 5 of their years. 10 years would pass elsewhere. When they got home, everyone on Earth would have aged 5 years more than they had." Another theory for potential time travelers involves something called cosmic strings. Narrow tubes of energy stretched across the entire length of the ever-expanding universe. These thin regions left over from the early cosmos are predicted to contain huge amounts of mass and therefore could warp the space-time around them. Cosmic strings are either infinite or they're in loops, with no ends, scientists say. The approach of two such strings parallel to each other would bend space-time so vigorously and in such a particular configuration that might make time travel possible, in theory. Also, under Einstein's theory of general relativity, gravity can bend time. Picture a four-dimensional fabric called space-time. When anything that has mass sits on that piece of fabric, it causes a dimple, or a bending of space-time. The bending of space-time causes objects to move on a curved path, and then that curvature of space is what we know as gravity. Keep in mind, both general and special relativity theories have been proven with GPS satellite technology today. Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity, which shows that time is relative depending on how fast you're moving, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. One of the leading researchers in this area is William A. Hiscock, a professor of physics at Montana State University. He says the mechanism for traveling into the distant future is to use the time dilation effect of special relativity, which states that a moving clock appears to tick more slowly the closer it approaches the speed of light. This effect, which has been overwhelmingly supported by experimental tests, applies to all clocks, including your own biological aging. If you were to depart from the Earth in a spaceship that could accelerate continuously at an acceleration that would produce a force equal to the gravity of the Earth's surface, you would approach the speed of light relative to the Earth within about a year. Under such circumstances, a round trip to the center of our galaxy and back to the Earth, a distance of some 60,000 light years, could be completed in only a little more than 40 years of traveling in a spacecraft. Upon arriving back to the Earth, the astronaut would be only 40 years older, while 60,000 years would have passed on Earth. Physicist and Professor Ronald Lawrence Mallett of the University of Connecticut is working on the concept of time travel based on Einstein's theory of relativity, and is absolutely convinced that time traveling is feasible. He predicts that human time travel will be possible in our century. Consider this. A recent time traveler came forward with the information that UFOs are in fact time machines. So to put it into simple terms, the time dilation theory states that time is different in different parts of the universe. For example, one day in another universe could be equal to 1,000 years on Earth. And oddly enough, the concept of time dilation was documented by the ancients thousands of years before mainstream science even acknowledged it. Believe it or not, many ancient cultures spoke of time travel and depicted characters who skipped forward in time. There's a Japanese tale that depicts a young fisherman named Urashima who visits an undersea palace. After 3 days, he returns home to his village to find himself 300 years in the future, where he has been forgotten, his house in ruins, and his family deceased. In Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata mentions the story of a king who travels to the heavens to meet the Creator. The king was gone for only 20 minutes. However, upon returning to the earth, millions of years had passed by. In the more recent years, several self-proclaimed time travelers have come forward with their stories and warnings of the future, one of which is named Noah. Noah claims to be a professional time traveler who is stranded in the year 2019, 11 years away from the year he belongs to, 2030. Noah says if he's not careful, he'll bump into a past version of himself and cause a paradox. This is a picture of the X-ray, which Noah says shows a device in his hand that helps him to time travel. He tells us it was an implant before he went back in time via a surgical procedure. He said it was painless and that the device actually helps in transporting all of the atoms within his body. In addition, Noah supposedly passed a lie detector test, proving his claims, which has given him wide notoriety and even coverage in the news. Supposedly, he was recruited into a top-secret program and went out on his own to forge a successful career as a full-time traveler, based in 2030. Noah says a past version of himself exists right now and is currently in middle school. He says he needs to stay far away from him to avoid this paradox, because the results could be profound. At the end of the day, We know time travel is completely possible. Even mainstream science agrees with that. So the real question is this: are there really active time travel missions currently taking place unbeknownst to us? And if there is, would they tell us?